Our industrial hemp pilot program is a complicated program. There's a lot to it. I am Doris Hamilton. I'm the program manager. I'd also like to introduce at this time Michelle Shane and Luke King. If you're a member of our program, you will be receiving a lot of emails from those two as well as myself. So don't expect all of the phone calls to be returned by me. You'll also be hearing from Michelle and Luke. I'd also like to recognize Mr. Brent Burchett, who is new to the program, came in with the new administration, and he is the director over our division. So he's actually my boss, but is very, very involved in the industrial hemp program. All of the pictures in our presentation are from Kentucky grown hemp, all the live hemp pictures. So let's go ahead and start at the beginning. We've heard about how Kentucky was a leader in the hemp industry. And these are just proof that we were a leader in the industry. In 1905 and 1906, these reports were published by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And again, this isn't a Kentucky Department of Agriculture publication. It's from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And in 1905, they said that nearly all of the hemp produced in this country is still grown in central Kentucky. Again, in 1906, they said that practically all of the hemp, of the cultivated hemp used in this country, or the seeds, are produced in a restricted locality on the bottomlands of the Kentucky River. So we really like those historical documents. Really gives credence to Kentucky hemp production back in the early 1900s. So we were once great in the state of Kentucky and well known for hemp production, and we hope to bring Kentucky back to the forefront and think we're well on the way of that. So as you know, our former commissioner, James Comer, started the industrial hemp pilot program, and our new commissioner, Ryan Quarles, is committed to building on that foundation. What is the legal authority for the KDA program? The legal authority lies in the Farm Bill. Of course, in 2013, what was then known as Senate Bill 50 passed, which removed industrial hemp from the controlled substance list in Kentucky and made it possible for us to implement the pilot program once the carve-out, or Section 7606 of the Farm Bill, was passed. What does Section 7606 in the Farm Bill do for us? It does three main important things for us. First of all, it outlines who may grow. Now read those carefully. It does not say that Farmer Jones down the road can grow industrial hemp. It says that the Department of Agriculture and institutions of higher education can grow hemp. Now, how we got to having Kentucky farmers involved in this program was a lengthy process and involved a lot of people to get there. But the purpose, it outlines the purpose in Section 7606, and it is for research purposes only. It defines two key elements. Number one, it defines industrial hemp as a cannabis plant with not more than 0.3% THC. That's the limit, that's the law, that's where we stay. Agricultural pilot program, it defines that as a pilot program to study the growth, cultivation, or marketing of industrial hemp. That word marketing is very key to the way we developed our program and why we feel that we're perfectly able to have processors involved in our research program. So what's the DEA's perspective on this? I mentioned that taking that leap from departments of agriculture growing industrial hemp to having farmers in Kentucky growing hemp, we had to have a few discussions with the DEA. Initially, they said you cannot import the seed because we believe you're going to have private citizens growing the seed. It was not until we developed the Memorandum of Understanding, which basically incorporates select participants in the state of Kentucky to grow or process hemp, handle hemp, on behalf of the Kentucky Department of Agriculture. So any participant in our program is the Kentucky Department of Agriculture for all intents and purposes when they're handling industrial hemp. That is why we have to have so much oversight. We don't like forms. We don't like bureaucracy. We're doing this to keep everybody legal. The MOU agreement, basically when you sign that, as I said, that is the only instrument that allows those private participants to legally grow or process industrial hemp as an extension of the department. The process of obtaining an MOU and what is required of the MOU, we don't have a lot of time to get into details, but these are the high points. Any potential participant has to complete and submit an application. The grower applications have a very hard deadline in the fall. Last year it was November 5th. This year we expect it to be along those same lines. Processors can apply at any time during the year, but it is best if they apply at the time of the growers as well. Number two, a background check is an obvious requirement. And then participants are selected based on their farming and processing experience, knowledge, available resources, previous compliance, overall quality of the research plan, and there's a lot of other things that go into that as well. But we expect the experience to be applicable to what the project is actually proposing to do. Once approved and the MOU is executed, they have to complete and submit all the necessary program forms and on time, comply with all the federal and state laws that pertain to growing and processing crops. So even the food safety laws, that those weren't written for industrial hemp, but if you're producing a food product, you have to meet with all those rules and regulations as well, and we try to make sure that happens. And then you must allow KDA on site to inspect. We collect GPS coordinates of every single field. We relay those to the state police, which helps them greatly. And we do test samples for THC in every plot across the state as well, and then do random testing for pesticides. In addition to our MOU participants, we are thrilled to have this many university affiliations this year. All of those universities and colleges represent more than 15 individual projects. So at the University of Kentucky, we have multiple projects. In addition to Dr. Williams, who you'll hear from this afternoon, and we value greatly, there are other principal investigators at the university that are taking on hemp research and getting involved. So we're really excited to have all those colleges and universities involved this year. What kind of research questions are we asking? Most of those are basic questions you would expect to be answered with the new crop, production methods, how to harvest it, when to harvest it, transporting it, how far is too far to think you could haul fiber and it still be economical. But at the Kentucky Department of Agriculture, this is an agricultural pilot project, and we're really concerned about the profitability of this. Is a Kentucky farmer going to be able to glean a profit from this crop? If they can't make a profit, the chances that they will incorporate this crop into their crop rotation plan is minimal. We'll go through a few of the program highlights from the past 2 years, talk about where we're headed in the future. In 2014, that was our very first year. We did plant 33 acres. I think Andy Graves went over a few of my statistics, so stole a little of my thunder, but that's okay, Andy, I forgive you. We did have 35 different hemp seed varieties in the very first year, so that was phenomenal in and of itself. In 2015, we went from 33 acres up to 1,742 total acres that were approved for planting. However, 922 were actually planted, and of those planted acres, about 47% of that was grain, 47% CBD, and about 6% of it was fiber. And at harvest time, there were over 500 acres harvested. Now, what happened between the 922 acres planted and the 500 acres harvested? A lot of things happened, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. This is what the production in 2015 looked like. Each of those green counties actually had hemp growing in them. So you can see, maybe from the back it may be difficult to see, but each of those red dots represents a processor across the state, and then the universities have got their logos on there as well. But the green actually means that there was hemp approved and grown in those counties. And that represents, there's 40 counties colored in that map. So 40 counties last year, they grew over 900 acres. I hesitate to call these results. They're just some basic observations from the production reports that we've gotten. So we're not going to get real deep into results from 2015. We'll just talk about some of the observations. So of those growers that actually planted hemp, we had about 65 growers altogether. So we talked about the percentage of the acres that were planted. This is the growers that planted. So there were far more grain farmers than CBD growers, and quite a few fiber there. Okay, if you're looking at the growers that actually planted are in blue. So for CBD, we had more than 20 growers that planted CBD hemp, and in the grain, we had nearly 35 growers that planted a grain crop. And fiber, it was a little less than 10. But if you look at the ones who harvested, there's where we lost between that planted acres of over 900 and the harvested acres of 500. There were several growers that weren't able to harvest that planted a grain crop. In 2015, we also had this chart shows the acres. Acres of the CBD and grain planted were near equal, and the acres harvested were very similar as well. And the fiber, we had only about 10% of the fiber that was planted was actually harvestable. And these are, I'll point this out, this does not involve the acres planted by the universities. This is just the private the MOU holders. What were our challenges? Why did we lose that acreage between planting and harvest? As I said, there's a lot of different reasons. It'll be impossible for us to actually identify all of those. These top 4 reasons are reasons that the producers actually provided to us. This is what they told us. Late seed arrival. So that they all felt was our fault. So in response to that, well, in response to our own desires to get the seed here earlier, was to start that import process earlier. It starts with an import permit request from the Department of Agriculture to the DEA. Last year there were significant delays. This year we're 2 months ahead of schedule. I'll say that. We backed up our application process 2 months. Thank you. It worked. The permits are here. Late planting, and that's directly related to the late arrival of the seeds, obviously. And excessively wet weather. You all remember how many days in July it rained last year? And how many inches it rained? A lot of our producers planted thinking, great, I'm going to beat the rain. I'll get it all planted today. They got 3 inches of rain tomorrow. It crusted the soil, and their seeds were not able to emerge from that crust. So others, it rained and rained and rained, and they waited until after it rained to plant, so they planted in August. So weather was a significant problem. Weeds was the main thing that not everybody, but weeds was the main thing that most people listed as causing the failure of their crop. Now, we really need to understand more about what caused the weeds. So that is, and I think lack of experience, I added that. But let's think about it. If we know the proper moisture to plant, if we know the proper density and the proper seed depth and the proper way to provide fertility to this crop, we're going to be much more successful. So I'm convinced that we're going to have a much more successful crop next year. This is one of the things that I saw when looking at a few numbers, just comparing nothing else, just the acres harvested are in red, the acres not harvested are in green. So of all of the crops, everybody that planted, almost a third of the growers decided not to add any fertility inputs, no fertilization. So those that chose not to fertilize at all, that's depicted on the right, they harvested a very, very small percentage of those acres were actually even worth harvesting. So on the left, those that applied fertilize, nearly 70% was actually harvestable. So it does lead us to believe, as we knew before, that this crop does need fertilized. So I hope that all of our participants will will accept that and provide the fertility inputs that this crop actually needs and be much more successful next year. You can check out the agricultural research done by UK to get more specifics, but 150 pounds of nitrogen is necessary for this crop. 2015 processor reports. We did have processor participants that turned in reports at the end of the year. 15 of those actually had bought hemp materials from Kentucky growers. Others had used some product possibly, but just had received donated materials and were working with small quantities. Some of them were still buying equipment and getting set up, so hadn't really made those purchases yet. But understand that this reporting deadline was in December. The harvest didn't take place until September or so. So there wasn't a lot of chance for the processors to show us a lot of results there in those couple of months, this being their first year for most of them. So, but we did have 4 processors reporting final product sales. But the big key here is that bottom line. 19 new jobs were created according to the processor reports that they submitted to us. Okay, Josh says 20 because he wasn't counted in that report. So he came on a little later. December 16th, maybe we can put that to 20. Highlights for this coming year. We received 323 applications by November 5th. 174 of those were approved as MOU participants. That represents about 40 processors and 130 growers. 4,500 acres have been approved. And the counties participating, it bumped up from 40 to 60. So we had a 50% increase in the number of counties that are affected by this growing program this year. So, and we have 15 university projects up from about, I think it was 8 last year. So very excited about the growth. What's new for 2016? Well, as you can tell from my picture choice, we have a new commissioner. He is committed to expanding this program and to building on that foundation, as I said earlier. We've already rolled out multi-year MOUs for Kentucky processors. Those have we've made that offer and be executing a lot of multi-year MOUs for our processors. We had the earlier application deadline, earlier seed delivery, DEA permits, 2 months ahead of schedule. So we're really happy about that, and we hope that you guys are too. And Commissioner Quarles is committed to continually seeking improvements to this program, as am Michelle, and Luke, and all of us at the Department of Agriculture involved in the industrial hemp program. Long-term goals, we want to build infrastructure of Kentucky growers, processors, and marketers. We want to offer that economic opportunity for small farms to major agribusiness. We want to see this move and transition from a research program that we must control to an industry. It's going to take changes on the federal level to do that, but we're hopeful that that will happen. We want to develop an alternative crop for farmers in Kentucky to provide job opportunities and to be the leading industrial hemp economy in the U.S. There's our contact information. I'll leave it with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Doris.